During the Whitewater investigation, Deborah Gorham testified she saw a Waco file in the security file cabinet next to Mr. Foster's desk. In addition, Michael Chertoff, counsel for the Senate committee, inquired about a letter by Vince Foster involving Waco. Neither was ever recovered during or after the crime scene search, and their whereabouts are still unknown. However, White House Secret Service agent Harry O'Neill testified that Maggie Williams was seen removing files from Foster's office the night of his death. Thomas Castleton, an intern and Mr. Foster's assistant, testified that he had also removed a box of files.
Just to let you know where we are in the state of the record. We have received evidence that, in fact, the box was in Mr. Foster's office. Did you understand the box you were taking up was a box of files that originated in Mr. Foster's office?
I did understand that, sir.
You heard that from Maggie Williams?
Yes.
And, in fact, it was Maggie Williams, the Chief of Staff to the First Lady, that you accompanied in taking this box up to the residence, right?
That's right.
What were you told by Maggie Williams about why the box was being taken up to the residence?
I was told that the contents of the box needed to be reviewed.
Reviewed by whom?
By the First Lady.
Maggie Williams was Mrs. Clinton's chief of staff. Maggie Williams took out, you can't call it anything else but what it is. It was evidence.
One of the interesting things that happens in an investigation is you begin to get anonymous phone calls. And we, in fact, received anonymous phone calls from Justice Department managers and attorneys who believed that pressure was placed on Janet Reno by Webb Hubbell and pressure that came from the First Lady of the United States. Now, we believed that because the military was present at Waco in some capacity, that the president may have made a decision to allow that to happen, following some sort of a legal protocol where he says this is of such a serious nature they need to be involved. And we asked for those documents and asked to see National Security Council documents. And were not provided with any information that enabled us to reach a conclusion.
It's a serious allegation that the president interfered with, changed, moved up the decision. And we can't just bandy these things around unless we have some real evidence.
If Combat Applications Group was on the ground that day, actually pulling triggers, the origin of that operation would have come directly from the White House. It would have come from the president, because Combat Applications Group is, for all intents and purposes, the president's private army.
It was discussed at the meeting that the senior levels of the Clinton administration had authorized Delta to be deployed to Waco, Texas, and not just 2 or 3 people deployed there, but enough people there to get the job done.
As we come to an end, all of us are looking for anything that happened in these hearings after 8 days and nights to indicate not that General Reno had something to do with this, but now the president. Well, after we've exhausted that bit, the only one left that I can think of is the butler. Maybe the butler did it. I am surprised you hadn't tried to subpoena the butler by now.
Our disappointment could not have been greater as professionals and as humans who care about the plight of others when the investigation was terminated by Congress.
As I count up the deaths here, 86, and then if you want to make the leap that Oklahoma City has some connection because it was done on the anniversary of Waco, that's another 160, give or take. So you're talking 246 lives, and for this Congress to try to oversee what in the hell happened and how did it happen, it just seems to be talking about the butler did it, a little capricious, a little frivolous, and that's just my opinion. I yield my time to Mr. McCullum.
Well, it's a struggle we've had. I was Attorney General when the Freedom of Information Act was passed, and the government hated the Freedom of Information Act. They hated me for pressing for it. because they don't want to be questioned about what they do. They don't want to have to explain what they do. And yet, if you want to be a free society, if you want to have justice, if you want to avoid a police state, you better know what your government does. You better insist upon a right to know what your government does.
Even though you have a $20 million investigation, you don't have $20 million answers. There's nothing about Waco I feel good about. But imagine seeing small children disarticulated with bullets and debris, and having to pick up their body and their head comes off in your left hand and their body comes apart in your right hand. And, I mean, that leaves a horrible, absolutely indelible, etched in your brain memory of a tragedy.
The prosecutors during our trial tried to prove conspiracy and murder, and all 11 defendants were found by a jury to be not guilty of those 2 charges. And I think that, to me, is for the president and for any media or anybody in this committee to continue to refer to us as murderers, I feel that's unjust.
The government cannot be proud about what they did on February the 28th. They cannot be proud about what they did on April the 19th. And they certainly can't be happy about what this jury said to them today.
We found all of the defendants not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and of murder. In essence, there was no way we could say that they did not use firearms.
I think the jury totally rejected the scary idea that came out in final argument that someone who would study a certain religion by virtue of the way he thinks would be guilty of a conspiracy to murder federal agents. That, I think, is one clear message that came out of this trial.
What we came to realize, too late to correct, was that we could not have found them guilty of using firearms without having found them guilty of either conspiracy to murder or murder. Those 2 charges were tied together.
When the judge looked at the jury's verdict, he said this finding of guilty to commission of a federal offense is inconsistent. I'll throw it out. But then he changed his mind, and when it came to sentencing, he stood the jury's verdict on his head. He said in his sentencing speech that since they were guilty of using a weapon in the commission of a federal offense, he would find that the federal offense was murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He went further on to say, you murdered not only the ATF agents, but your own co-religionist.
Federal sentencing guidelines allowed Judge Smith to choose a sentence of between 5 and 40 years. He gave all but 2 defendants the maximum sentence of 40 years in federal prison.
I knew what was going to happen. I knew what the agents were going to say, what they're going to blame myself and others in there for. But, you know, it was just something I had to go through.
I'm a school teacher, and it's, you know, a good opportunity for me to get away from the kids and forget all about them for a while and just come and relax for a while.